True salvation never comes from waiting for those who hurt you to realize their mistakes, but arrives the moment you decide to travel light and hold your own umbrella. I woke up to the shocking realization that I had somehow become the leading man in a novel. I was now the exact character who spent every chapter of the story making life a living hell for the heroine, Sarah Sterling. It just so happened that her precious first love had returned to the country that very same morning. She appeared before me with divorce papers in hand without a single moment of doubt. The irony of the entire situation was thick enough to choke on. All of this was unfolding on the exact day of our third wedding anniversary. I agreed to her demands almost instantly without giving it a second thought. I did this because I knew exactly what the future held for her in less than a month. She was destined to be involved in a horrific car accident. From that point on, she would lose all sensation in both her legs. She was fated to spend the remainder of her life confined to a wheelchair. "You know as well as I do that I never actually loved you," she said coldly. "If you sign these papers right now, I will give you $20 million. Henry Harrison is finally back in town, so let us just end this marriage." I looked up at her and felt myself freeze in pure shock. Wait, did she just call me Morrison Miller? This entire scene felt disturbingly familiar to me. It was as if I had stepped directly into the pages of that dark romance novel I used to read. I had spent many sleepless nights reading about the miserable life of this specific male protagonist. A flood of foreign memories suddenly surged into my brain a second later. I no longer had any reason to doubt the impossible truth of my situation. I had actually transmigrated into the fictional world of a book. To make matters worse, I was now the male protagonist, Morrison Miller. The woman standing before me and demanding a signed divorce decree was the problem. She was none other than the heroine of this story, Sarah Sterling. I glanced over at the expensive candlelit dinner sitting untouched on the table. The romantic flames flickered gently in the dim light of the dining room. That was when I finally remembered the significance of the date. Today was the wedding anniversary for the original Morrison and Sarah. Choosing to demand a divorce on a day like this was beyond cruel. It was honestly disgusting and completely heartless of her to do this now. "I am warning you right now," she snapped. "If you refuse to sign, I will make sure you are blacklisted from Hollywood forever." I remained silent, and when she saw my lack of reaction, her irritation spiked. Sarah Sterling became visibly annoyed, and her tone became even more vicious and blunt. I was well aware of the weight behind her threats. The original Morrison was nothing more than a struggling actor at the bottom of the industry. He had spent years playing background characters and insignificant minor roles. At best, he could land a fifth or sixth billed supporting role in a pilot. Then there was Sarah Sterling herself. She was the sole heiress to the massive Sterling global conglomerate. She wielded absolute power in the business world with a single word. Crushing a person like me would be easier for her than stepping on an ant. In the original storyline, the previous Morrison had desperately refused to let her go. I was a completely different person with a different set of priorities. I looked up and gave her a cold, calculating stare. I casually picked up the divorce papers and began to flip through the pages. I let out a few dismissive scoffs as I scanned the unfair terms. $20 million, Sarah? Do you really think this is enough to pay me off? Do you honestly take me for some lowly beggar on the street? My price is set at a flat $50 million. Sarah Sterling's face darkened instantly with visible rage. She gritted her teeth and forced out each word with pure venom. "You do not want your freedom, Morrison. You just want to get your hands on my money." If the original man had heard that, it would have cut him like a knife. However, I felt absolutely no affection for this woman anymore. I did not care if I was currently broke and struggling. I was simply determined not to let her walk all over me ever again. I was not one of those dramatic male leads from a cheap romance novel. I was not about to say something stupid like "your money cannot insult me." I'm a very practical man who understands the value of a dollar. As you know, I am currently a complete nobody in the Hollywood acting world. Henry Harrison, on the other hand, is a completely different story. He is an A-list movie star who just returned from his time abroad. If the public found out he was fooling around with a married woman, it would be a disaster. Can you imagine how quickly that scandal would blow up on Twitter? I know you have the power and the money to bury the story, but think about how much time and energy you would waste cleaning up that massive mess. The price is $50 million. Pay me, and I will act as if I never even knew you two existed. I promise that I will not utter a single word about our history to the press. At the end of the day, Sarah was a very shrewd businesswoman. She took a moment to weigh the pros and cons of my offer. Although her face was tight with frustration and resentment, she made her choice. She finally gave me a sharp nod and agreed to the terms. I grabbed my bag and stood up to leave the restaurant. Before walking out, I threw one last comment over my shoulder. Make sure you take care of the bill for this expensive dinner. I turned around and walked away without looking back even once. It turned out that Sarah Sterling's efficiency was truly remarkable. The revised divorce papers were delivered to me that very night. Early the next morning, Sarah and I went to the courthouse to finalize the paperwork. By the afternoon, $50 million had been successfully transferred into my bank account. I moved out of our former luxury home immediately after the transfer. I took my luggage and went straight to stay with my manager, Martin Cooper. My manager was a childhood friend who had grown up with the original Morrison. The apartment he was currently living in was quite nice. The previous Morrison had actually bought the entire place in cash as a gift for him. Throughout all these years, he had remained a loyal confidant. He was one of the few people who knew the truth about the marriage to Sarah Sterling. Is it finally over? Martin asked. Yes, I am officially a single man, I replied. He watched me haul my heavy bags into the middle of the living room. After I gave him a brief summary of what had happened, he looked stunned. His face was a mask of total disbelief as he processed the news. Hold on. Were you not just celebrating your anniversary with Sarah yesterday? Yesterday was yesterday, but today is a brand new day, I told him. Nobody could have predicted this sudden and total change of heart. The man who was desperate to stay with Sarah forever just yesterday had left her today. He had ended the marriage without a single shred of hesitation. There was not a single doubt in my mind about leaving her. I was not feeling sad about the breakup at all. In fact, I was feeling quite smug about the whole situation. I got the divorce and walked away with $50 million for my trouble. I boasted. Look at you getting excited over that, Martin said while rolling his eyes. Martin gave me a look of pure exasperation at my comment. If you're going to leave her, you should have squeezed her for more than $50 million. Considering that Sarah Sterling is worth billions, $50 million did seem a bit low. It was a relatively small amount compared to the massive Sterling fortune. It was not that I had not considered asking for a higher price, but every time I thought about what was coming, I felt a chill. In less than a month, she was going to be involved in a horrific car accident. From that point on, she would lose all feeling in both of her legs. She was fated to spend the remainder of her life confined to a wheelchair. My only goal was to sever all ties with her as quickly as possible. Based on Sarah's current situation, $50 million was a number she could tolerate. If I had pushed for any more, she probably would have refused to sign the papers. Delaying the divorce was the last thing I wanted to do at this stage. I had no intention of following the path of the original Morrison. I was determined to avoid the tragic fate that had been written for him. I did not want to be there when Henry Harrison abandoned her after the crash. I was not going to waste my life proving my loyalty to a woman like her. I was not going to stay by the side of a paralyzed woman forever just for show. This had nothing to do with discriminating against people with disabilities. I simply had a personal distaste for Sarah Sterling that I could not ignore. While Martin helped me unpack my things, I headed to the kitchen. I was busy pouring 2 glasses of water when I heard him shouting. Martin was in the living room, swearing at his phone at the top of his lungs. I cannot believe those two actually made their relationship public, Martin yelled. What's going on? I asked as I walked over to see the screen. A viral headline was splashed across the entertainment news feed. Movie star Henry Harrison and heiress Sarah Sterling were officially a couple. The post was already trending and gaining millions of likes across the internet. That woman has such a short memory, Martin sneered with disgust. Martin let out a harsh laugh as he stared at the romantic photo. Did she forget how Henry dumped her when Sterling Global was struggling? Business at Sterling Global had not always been successful and smooth. They took a massive financial hit 3 years ago that nearly crippled them. Although they were not close to bankruptcy, the situation was very dire. Henry Harrison was her boyfriend at the time and heard the rumors of failure. He immediately dumped her because he thought her family was going broke. He could not wait to distance himself from her and her family's problems. Sarah had begged him to stay and even got on her knees to plead. He ignored her and caught the first flight out of the country to go study. I decided that I did not want to waste another second on their drama. I reached out and tapped the screen of the phone to turn it off. Stop looking at that trash because it is not worth getting angry over. Come on, let me take you out for a massive steak dinner instead. Martin immediately forgot his annoyance at the mention of good food. He started getting ready to leave with impressive speed and enthusiasm. I shook my head at my friend's predictable obsession with a good meal. I cannot help but laugh at how easily he could be distracted by food. Morrison and Martin had grown up together in an orphanage in Chicago. They had relied on each other since they were very young children. They remained inseparable even after they grew up and went to college. They started out sharing a cramped basement apartment in a bad neighborhood. Now, they were living in a bright, modern building in a great part of town. Every step of their success had been built by their hard work together. In the original story, Martin was the only person who stayed truly loyal. No matter how much drama Morrison faced, Martin was always there for him. His support for his best friend was the one thing that never wavered. When we reached the restaurant, I told him not to worry about the bill. I insisted that he order whatever he wanted from the entire menu. He picked out a few items, but I noticed he was being very careful. I could tell immediately that he was trying to save me money by being cheap. When the waiter handed me the menu, I decided to take over. I added 2 of his favorite expensive dishes to our dinner order. The prices were steep, but I did not mind spending the money today. Once the waiter was gone, Martin leaned in and whispered to me. He said that we really did not need to eat at such a fancy place. What are you worried about? I asked him with a confident smile. We have plenty of money, and if we spend it, I will just make more. He looked stunned for a moment before nodding in agreement with me. We were both scrolling through our phones while waiting for the food. That was when I heard a familiar and incredibly annoying voice nearby. I cannot believe it is actually you. Morrison Miller, the voice said. You really do have a habit of taking things that belong to others. I used to eat at this restaurant all the time before I moved away. This specific table was always my favorite spot in the whole place. It has the best view in the house, and the atmosphere is perfect. Even if Sarah Sterling does not love you, you should not follow me around. Did you really have to follow me here just to steal my favorite table? I looked up and saw Henry Harrison's smug face staring down at me. His handsome face was perfectly illuminated by the restaurant lights. I had to admit that Henry's looks were absolutely flawless to the eye. Even in Hollywood, where everyone is attractive, he was special. His career was built entirely on his stunning looks rather than his talent. If he were not so handsome, his career would have ended years ago. He relied on eye drops for every emotional scene he ever filmed. Despite that, he had been promoted to a top-tier superstar in the industry. I was not a psychic, so I had no idea he was coming here today. I certainly did not know that this was his supposedly reserved seat. I had no clue that he considered this table his personal property. Henry leaned in closer to me and lowered his voice to a whisper. Things taken from others never stay with the thief for long, he said. He kept his eyes on Sarah Sterling as she slowly walked toward us. As she arrived, he reached out and wrapped his arm around her waist. Henry rested his hand gently on her shoulder in a possessive way. His entire demeanor shifted into that of a devoted and caring boyfriend. They actually looked quite good standing there together as a couple. Morrison, you know how much I love this specific table, he said. Why do you feel the need to compete with me over everything? Is it because you are bitter that Sarah chose me over you? You seem upset that she decided to be with me instead of you. I will just leave and let you have the table if it makes you feel better. He was doing a great job of acting like the misunderstood victim here. I thought to myself that he should use this emotion in his movies. If he could act this well on screen, he would be far more successful. His reputation for being a wooden actor was definitely well-deserved. The haters calling him talentless would have nothing to talk about. Henry pretended that he was about to turn around and walk away. Sarah Sterling was not about to let her precious boyfriend leave the place. She grabbed his hand firmly to stop him from taking another step. She leaned into his chest and spoke in a voice that was sickeningly sweet. "It is just a table," she said to him while ignoring my presence. "We can find somewhere else to sit and enjoy our dinner. If it really bothers you that much, I have a simple solution. I could just buy the whole restaurant and kick everyone else out." That sentence perfectly illustrated her immense wealth and arrogance. She actually had enough money to make that threat a reality. "Listen, Morrison, I'm going to make you an offer right now. I will give you $1 million to get out of this seat." Her voice was loud enough for several other tables to hear her. People started turning their heads to watch the drama unfold at our table. Being insulted so publicly in a fancy restaurant was meant to be humiliating. The only thing I felt like doing was taking her up on the deal. She could say whatever she wanted as long as she paid me. Henry leaned back against Sarah Sterling and enjoyed his moment. He was savoring the thought of my upcoming emotional breakdown. He was waiting for me to get angry or burst into tears. He wanted to see me suffer under the weight of her cruel words. Instead, I calmly pulled out my phone without changing my expression. I opened my banking app and held the screen up to Sarah Sterling. "Please scan this code right now, Miss Sterling," I said. "Once the money is in my account, I will leave immediately." Her mouth twitched in pure shock as she looked at my screen. She seemed completely unable to believe that I was taking the money. The previous version of me would have been crying by now. He would have been humiliated to the point of a mental breakdown. However, I just stood my ground until she finally transferred the $1 million. I heard the notification chime and told Martin that we were moving. We walked over to a different table further away from them. Fortunately, our food had not been brought out to the table yet. I called the waiter over and asked him to bring our order here. I did not care about my pride as much as the easy money. Martin, however, looked very troubled by the exchange we just had. "Are you really going to let her insult you like that?" he asked. "Do you not think her behavior was completely out of line?" I just winked at him and gave him a bright, happy smile. "I just made $1 million for switching tables," I pointed out. "You should never let your pride get in the way of a paycheck." He reminded me that I used to hate taking any money from her. "You used to say that you wanted to prove your love was real." Hearing those words made me feel incredibly embarrassed for my past self. The truth was that she had every reason to be suspicious of him. Sarah Sterling always believed that the original Morrison was a gold digger. He and Henry Harrison had been roommates at the same university. Morrison had worked multiple part-time jobs to pay for his classes. He spent most of his time working in coffee shops near campus. He even sold handmade crafts on the sidewalk just to buy groceries. He was an extremely frugal person throughout his college years. Some called him hardworking, while others just thought he was incredibly cheap. Every single dollar he spent was earned through his own hard work. He was the perfect example of a self-made man coming from nothing. His story was actually quite inspiring if you looked at it objectively. He was the classic archetype of the poor but ambitious young hero. However, he became a total idiot the moment feelings were involved. People say that falling in love makes you lose your intelligence. Some people never seem to get their smarts back once they're gone. Usually, people just find someone new to be stupid over. Morrison remained completely obsessed with Sarah Sterling and refused to move on. He had thrown his entire life away for a woman who hated him. "Martin, let's make a deal right now," I said seriously. "Please never bring up any of the embarrassing things I did before. Real money is much more reliable than some vague concept of romance. I have realized that cash is far more valuable than affection." Martin slowly gave me a thumbs up as a sign of respect. "I completely agree with your new outlook on life," he said. "I thought that the encounter at the restaurant would be forgotten quickly. I assumed it was just a minor incident that was over and done with. I was wrong because someone had filmed the entire interaction on video. Henry Harrison and Sarah Sterling never did anything quietly in public. They were followed by paparazzi everywhere they went in Los Angeles. It was impossible for them to have a private meal anywhere. Once again, I found myself serving as a background character in their romance. The comments on Twitter were full of people praising the famous couple. Fans were saying that their relationship was the sweetest thing ever. They were amazed that she spent $1 million just for a seat. Everyone was convinced that this was proof of their eternal love. However, some eagle-eyed users eventually noticed me in the video. Is it the struggling actor Morrison Miller sitting at that table? He probably sat there on purpose just to get attention from them. I hope someone kicks him out of Hollywood for being so desperate. Some of the comments even suggested that I was trying to break them up. They were calling me a homewrecker who was obsessed with her. I found the whole situation to be completely and utterly ridiculous. You cannot be a homewrecker if the other person does not care. I was being attacked for a situation that I had not even created. They were painting me as a stalker who would not let go. I scrolled through the toxic comments and felt a headache coming on. I could not believe how quickly the narrative had been twisted. I had literally done nothing wrong besides try to eat my dinner. I went from being her husband to a supposed homewrecker in one day. Martin walked back into the room after finishing a phone call. He had a strange look on his face that made me nervous. I already knew what he was about to tell me before he spoke. Morrison, the producers of that news show, just called me with bad news. The show was a big production that was funded by Sterling Global. They had total control over every aspect of the casting process. Morrison had won the part based purely on his acting skills. He was supposed to play the role of the third male lead. He had never used his marriage to Sarah Sterling to get ahead. He was determined to succeed on his own merits without any help. Even the director had been impressed by his performance during auditions. He had earned his spot through talent and hard work alone. The production originally had a different actor set for the main role. However, the script was changed to please Henry Harrison's ego. Sarah Sterling had forced the studio to give the role to him. She had basically handed him the lead part on a silver platter. It is not just about a lead actor being replaced, Martin explained. The new star of the show is going to be Henry Harrison himself. You have several intense scenes scheduled with him in the episodes. There are scenes where you get pushed into water and trade slaps. Are you really not worried about working with him after everything? Martin had every reason to be concerned about this collaboration. Back in college, Henry had become a celebrity solely for his looks. He was constantly surrounded by girls who were obsessed with him. Morrison was just as handsome as Henry in those college days. The two of them were often called the twin pillars of the university. They were widely considered the most attractive men on the entire campus. During the annual University Arts Festival, they were cast in a play. They were playing the two lead roles in a dramatic production. Everything had gone perfectly smoothly during the rehearsals for the show. Things changed drastically on the night of the actual performance. There was a scene where Henry was supposed to slap Morrison. They had practiced a stage slap that was supposed to be fake. Instead of faking it, Henry delivered a massive, real slap to his face. He used every bit of strength he had in his arm for that hit. Morrison was completely stunned and disoriented by the unexpected blow. He managed to finish the play despite the ringing in his ears. After the curtain call, the drama club held a party to celebrate. Everyone was talking about how realistic the performance had been. Sarah Sterling was at the party and stayed close to Henry all night. Morrison's face was swollen for hours after that hit from Henry. Even heavy makeup could not hide the finger marks on his cheek. Sarah let out a small gasp when she finally saw his swollen face. Morrison, I'm sure it was just an accident, she said dismissively. Henry probably thought a real slap would look more authentic. Do you not think the scene looked much better because of it? I'm sorry you got hurt, but it was for the sake of the show. You should be willing to make sacrifices for your professional art. She expected him to just accept the physical abuse for the play. The other students exchanged awkward looks but said nothing to her. They all knew Henry was being a bully, but nobody would cross him. Even if they had agreed on a real slap, he did not need that force. Henry was protected by his relationship with the Sterling family. Sterling Global owned the biggest talent agency in the entire country. Nobody was brave enough to offend the most powerful couple there. Morrison had remembered that humiliation vividly as graduation approached. He had decided to give them a taste of their own medicine one day. He looked Henry right in the eye and gave him a cold smile. If you love realism, you should just die on stage next time. That would certainly make the scene more convincing for the audience. Think about it as a small sacrifice for the sake of your precious art. His comment caused a collective gasp of shock from the entire room. Henry's eyes immediately filled with fake tears as he looked at her. "I am so sorry, Sarah. I did not mean to make him angry," he said. Sarah immediately wrapped her arms around him to comfort him. "Morrison, there is no need to attack him because I rejected you. Just because I turned down your confession does not give you rights. I only have eyes for Henry Harrison and nobody else but him." Morrison stood there frozen as she humiliated him in front of everyone. He had never expected her to throw his private feelings in his face. Henry looked smug because he knew about the confession all along. Morrison had confessed his feelings long before she started dating him. Now she was using it as a weapon to make him look like a loser. Looking back on those memories now, I could only wonder what happened. How could he have ever fallen for someone as cruel as her? It was fine for her to reject him if she was not interested. However, she had no right to use his vulnerability like that. She was truly a low-class person beneath her expensive silk clothes. I clenched my fists as I thought about the way she treated him. I cursed the ridiculous plot of the novel for making him miserable. Despite the drama, I still had a professional job to do on set. My role as the third lead actually had a lot of great scenes. I was not going to be stupid enough to break my contract now. Morrison had quit the show in the book because of Henry Harrison. He ended up losing a lot of money and a great opportunity then. The actor who eventually replaced him became a superstar overnight. Working on the same set meant I was going to see him every day. The first few days of filming were surprisingly quiet and peaceful. However, Sarah Sterling started showing up at the studio every day. Her presence caused the entire production to grind to a total halt. The director was a very serious man who valued his strict schedule. He had lost the actor he wanted because of her constant interference. He was clearly losing his patience with the celebrity couple's antics. "How can you still have such a good appetite?" Martin asked me. I was busy drinking a large Starbucks and eating a delicious pastry. My character in the show was supposed to be a bit soft physically. Why should I stop eating? I asked him with my mouth full. Martin gestured toward a corner of the set with his chin today. I looked over and saw Sarah Sterling sitting directly on his lap. They were being incredibly affectionate in front of the entire crew. It looked like they were seconds away from a full makeout session. I immediately looked away and covered his eyes with my hand. "Stop looking at them before you go blind," I joked to him. Seeing them together was like watching someone use a public sidewalk. It was absolutely revolting to witness their public display of affection. "Does it really not hurt you to see them together?" Martin asked. "I have told you a dozen times that I have no feelings left." I could not understand why he was finding it hard to believe. Morrison had been completely obsessed with her for many long years. He would have done literally anything she asked him to do before. Just relax and enjoy the free catering provided on the set. We get to eat for free while we wait, so it is good. The director was ignoring the couple and focusing on technical setup. As a minor actor, I had no right to complain about things. Henry Harrison spent most of his time showing off his relationship. They wanted everyone to know how happy and wealthy they were. The tabloids were having a field day with all the constant updates. There was a news story about them every few days on Twitter. Their fans on Instagram were absolutely obsessed with their whole relationship. I was not looking forward to the premiere or any awards. The only thing I wanted to see was his reaction to her accident. A month passed by in what felt like the blink of an eye. We had just finished filming 3 scenes in a row that morning. Martin came running over to me as soon as we had a break. He told me that Sarah Sterling had been in a devastating accident. She was currently in the emergency room fighting for her life now. Henry Harrison immediately dropped everything and asked the director for leave. He needed to maintain his image as the devoted boyfriend for fans. He knew that rushing to the hospital would make a great headline. I was certain that he had already alerted his publicist and paparazzi. The news of the grieving boyfriend would be trending on Twitter soon. I let out a silent scoff at his predictable and fake behavior. He had no idea that this accident was far worse than bruises. Sarah Sterling was going to lose one of her legs today. The doctors were going to have to amputate to save her life. I finished my scheduled scenes and was allowed to go home early. I spent the evening scrolling through the news on my phone. The details of her condition were already leaking out to everyone. Every gossip site was covered with updates about the Sterling heiress. The news of the amputation became the #1 trending topic. Her fans were absolutely devastated and began flooding his social media. They were begging him to make a statement about her current condition. They wanted to know if the rumors about her leg were true. Even if it is true, we know you love her too much. They were convinced that their love was strong enough for anything. Henry Harrison stayed off the grid and refused to provide updates. They kept posting about how a missing leg should not matter. The comments were coming in by the thousands every single minute. Henry Harrison stayed silent and refused to give any public updates. In the original novel, the marriage to her had been secret. The Sterling family had kept the news out of the press before. This time, however, the entire situation was completely and totally different. I was enjoying some fruit while I watched the online drama. Suddenly, a familiar phone number flashed across my screen today. I hesitated for a few seconds before finally deciding to answer. As soon as I answered, a woman started screaming at me. "Morrison Miller, where the hell have you been?" She yelled out. "I am ordering you to get to the hospital right now." It was Monica Sterling, her mother, and she sounded absolutely furious. She had never liked me and had always treated me poorly. Morrison had only been allowed into the family due to gratitude. He had saved her grandmother's life years ago in an emergency. Before she died, her final wish was to see them married. She wanted to make sure her granddaughter was with someone trusted. Monica Sterling looked down on me because I was a poor orphan. She clearly had no idea that we had already signed papers. I had no intention of going to the hospital at first. However, the thought of the drama awaiting me was too tempting. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to go. I threw on some clothes and headed over to the hospital. The Sterling family had rented out an entire floor for privacy. When I pushed open the door, she was still completely unconscious. Henry and Monica were standing by her side in the room. Henry Harrison immediately glared at me as soon as I arrived. "Why did it take you so long to get here, Morrison? Do you not care that she is in such a condition?" Monica Sterling's face turned a violent shade of red with anger. She marched over to me and raised her hand to slap. I was much faster than her and managed to catch her. She was in her 50s, and I had no desire to hurt. "Please calm down and try to speak with some respect, Monica. There is no need for you to resort to physical violence." I let go of her arm, and she stumbled back a few. She nearly lost her balance, but managed to catch a chair. "You have become completely disrespectful," she screamed at me in rage. The previous Morrison had always been polite and submissive to her. I was not that man, and I had no reason to tolerate. "If I had not stopped you, you would have hit me. What exactly did you want me to do when you called?" "It is simple," she replied while regaining her total composure now. "You're going to quit acting today and serve my daughter. You will stay at home and serve her every single need. How much are you planning to pay me for this job?" Monica stared at me with her mouth wide open in disbelief. "You are actually asking for a salary to take care of her?" "Of course I am," I replied to her with a smirk. "Your daughter and I have absolutely no connection to each other. You clearly have not heard that we are officially divorced already. Besides, her current boyfriend is standing right here in this room. Henry Harrison should be the one taking care of her, Morrison." Monica let out a dismissive laugh and looked with pure contempt. "If you agree to stay here, we will announce the marriage." She honestly thought being a Sterling was a huge prize here. "You're being completely delusional if you think that is fair. Even a professional nurse expects to be paid for their labor. Why would I spend my life caring for her for free? I will do it, but my price is $10 million a month." Monica gasped as if I had just slapped her face hard. "You have lost your mind," she whispered to me in shock. At that moment, Sarah Sterling began to wake up in bed. Monica rushed over to the bed to check on her daughter. I stayed by the door, keeping my distance from them both. Henry stood awkwardly in the middle of the hospital room. Sarah slowly opened her eyes and began to realize the horror. She started to panic as she tried to move her body. "No, this cannot be happening," she whimpered to herself in bed. "Where's my leg? What happened to my leg right now? Mom, please tell me you are lying to me," she cried. "Is it just the anesthesia making me feel numb right now?" I crossed my arms and spoke from the far side room. It is not a hallucination, Sarah, I said very calmly to her. One of your legs is actually gone, and it is real. Sarah began to shake, and Monica gave me a death glare. I just think every patient deserves to know the truth here. Sarah turned her tear-filled eyes toward me with little hope. Are you just saying this to get back at me, Morrison? Please tell me that you are just making up a joke. Why would I bother trying to get revenge on you now? Your hands are working fine, so lift the blanket and see. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached down toward her missing limb. Monica quickly grabbed her hand to prevent her from seeing it. She held her daughter down and started screaming for a doctor. She was desperate to shield Sarah from the brutal reality now. As soon as the doctor arrived, Monica pulled me outside. How could you be so heartless to her at this time? I will never let you near my daughter again, she said. You could get on your knees and beg me, Morrison. I wondered what was going through her head at that moment. Her daughter was no longer the perfect, untouchable heiress of Sterling. The board of directors would soon view her as a liability. They would slowly begin to strip away her power and authority. Her assets would be drained by those who were more ambitious. Eventually, she would be left with nothing as the company fell. Who do you think is going to want a disabled wife? Monica's face turned beet red at my blunt and honest suggestion. She desperately grabbed Henry Harrison's arm to prove me wrong today. We do not need you because Sarah still has Henry here. She was trying to convince herself their relationship was still very solid. Henry immediately pulled his arm away from her as if she were sick. He pulled out his phone and pretended he had an urgent message. I am so sorry, Monica, but something important has come up now. I have to leave right now, but I will check later. Henry ran out of the hallway faster than he ever had before. He was terrified of being stuck taking care of a disabled woman. I could not stop myself from laughing out loud at him. Monica's expression became even more miserable as she watched him run. Do you really think you will not regret this, Morrison Miller? Sarah might have lost a leg, but the family is powerful. Do you honestly believe anyone would dare to disrespect us here? I had seen enough of this show, so I waved goodbye. I turned my back on them and walked away with a smile. The filming schedule finally returned to normal once she was gone. I was surprised to see that Henry had issued a statement. He vowed that his love for her was completely unconditional now. He claimed that he would stay by her side no matter what. The internet was immediately filled with praise for his supposed loyalty. Everyone was talking about how handsome and noble Henry was today. Henry is such a saint for staying with her after this. Those people who called him a coward should be truly ashamed. It seems that true love really can conquer any obstacle here. I felt physically sick as I read the endless praise online. Suddenly, I heard my name being called from behind on set. I turned around and saw the great superstar Henry Harrison there. What do you want now? I asked him with a disinterested look. He told me he knew I was waiting for him to fail. I am sorry to disappoint you, but I am staying with her. He was trying to act like a hero for the press. How many shares of the company did Monica give you, Henry? Henry's eyes widened in total shock at my blunt question today. I was not surprised because I knew they still had cash. I warned him that people in the family were waiting for her. She might be in charge now, but that could change fast. Are you willing to bet your future on her slipping power? Henry's confident expression began to crumble as he thought about it. He was starting to realize the massive risk he was taking. If your love for her is truly genuine, then ignore me. I got up and walked toward the restroom without any response. I never expected her to reach out to me after divorce. She should have been calling Henry Harrison for comfort instead of me. I frowned as I stared at the screen before finally answering. There was a long silence on the other end for seconds. Then I heard a voice that sounded completely broken and desperate. Morrison, she whispered with a tone that sounded like pure longing. What do you want? I asked in a very cold tone. How did things between us get this bad? She asked me. It was not supposed to be like this for us. You used to love me more than anything in the world. You promised that you would never give up on me ever. Why did you sign those papers so easily this time around? You have not even visited me once since the accident happened. I really want some of that homemade porridge you used to make. Morrison had been her primary caregiver in the original story version. He had spent every day trying to heal her shattered ego. He had studied cooking and psychology just to help her recover. He had put his entire life on hold for her comfort. Sarah had been incredibly cruel to him at first in bed. He stayed until she finally began to accept his loyal help. If you want porridge, order takeout or hire a professional chef. There is no reason for you to be calling me now. She went silent before her voice changed to a sharp tone. You're not the Morrison Miller I know, she said. Who are you? The man I knew would never speak thus. He would never speak with such a cold and heartless tone. She started screaming about how I had stolen her real husband. I did not care enough to listen to her rants. I simply hung up the phone and tossed it aside. I had a strange dream where I was face to face. It was like looking into a perfect mirror of myself there. Who are you? I asked the figure in the dream world. Hello, I'm the real Morrison Miller, he said gently. He wanted to thank me for everything I had done. He had wanted to leave Sarah Sterling, but was unable to. He felt like a puppet being controlled by an invisible hand. Your desire for freedom combined with mine brought you here. You took over and broke the chains holding me back. Now I can finally live my life on my own terms. He thanked me as the dream world began to fade away. When I woke up, I was in my own bed again. My phone was open to the last page of the novel. The content of the book had changed completely while I slept. In this new version, they were officially divorced and separate. Monica had given Henry Harrison shares to stay with her daughter. Morrison had left the country after his show finished filming. She eventually fell into a deep and very dark depression. The board voted to remove her from her high position. Henry Harrison was caught having an affair with another actress. A recording of him insulting her disability was leaked online. I have wanted to dump that cripple for a long time. If I had known, I would not have gotten back together. His career was destroyed instantly as his fans turned against him. The story ended with her death from alcohol poisoning soon. Morrison Miller returned to accept his award for Best Actor. I noticed one specific comment on the novel forum today. The user's name was Morrison Miller, and it was short. It just said thank you in a very simple font. I told myself it was just a weird coincidence then. True salvation never comes from waiting for those who hurt you. It arrives the moment you decided to travel light yourself. When you find peace, everything else will fall into place. May you always find the strength to be your own hero. The world is wide and full of new possibilities for you. Never let anyone else define who you are meant to be. Your future is a blank page waiting for your story. Be proud of how far you have come on this journey. You are worthy of all the happiness that life brings. The past is gone, and the future is yours alone. Live your life with purpose and never look back again. How many shares of the company did Monica give you? Henry's eyes widened in total shock at my direct question. How on earth could you possibly know about that deal? He looked around nervously to make sure nobody was listening in. He remained silent and refused to confirm the details further. I let out a soft laugh at his obvious discomfort. Monica had made it clear that her daughter was valuable. She believed that money could buy her daughter any husband. I was not surprised at all by her cynical business tactics. As long as they had wealth, they had some power. Henry, do not say I did not give you a warning. There are many people waiting for her to fail now. She might be in control today, but tomorrow is different. Nobody can predict what will happen to her family company. Are you really sure about this dangerous and risky bet? Are you willing to gamble your life on her future? Henry was not exactly a genius when it came to strategy. He looked genuinely worried after hearing my logical point of view. His resolve was clearly starting to fade away as he thought. I shrugged my shoulders and decided to add one thing. If your love for her is real, then ignore me. If you truly want to be with her forever, fine. If you're sincere, then my words mean nothing at all. I stood up and walked away from him without looking back. I headed toward the restroom to wash my hands and leave. I assumed she would never want to speak to me again. Our marriage was officially over and the papers were signed. She should have been relying on her new boyfriend now. I was surprised to see her number on my screen. I felt a surge of annoyance as I stared at it. I hesitated for a few seconds before finally answering the call. There was a long and heavy silence on the other end. Then I heard her voice, sounding completely broken and very tired. Morrison, she whispered with a tone of pure and deep regret. She sounded like she was reaching out for something lost. What do you want? I asked her in a freezing voice. She was silent as she tried to gather her thoughts. She finally spoke again with a voice full of sadness. How do we end up like this? She asked me. Things were never supposed to turn out this way for us. I thought you were supposed to love me forever, Morrison. You promised that you would never leave me no matter what. Why did you let me go so easily this time around? You have not even come to see me at the hospital. I really miss the food you used to cook for me. I just want to have some of your homemade porridge now. In the original story, he was her dedicated and loyal caregiver. He spent every single day trying to fix her shattered ego. He had to handle her constant screaming and emotional breakdowns. He had dedicated his entire life to her recovery and health. He had learned cooking and therapy just to help her. He had studied everything he could to be the perfect husband. He was a slave to her every single need and desire. He cooked different gourmet meals for her every single day. He spent hours making the perfect porridge for her to eat. She had been incredibly cruel and rejected all of his help. She would throw the food on the floor to spite him. She did not care about his hard work or his love. It was only much later that she began to appreciate him. She finally realized that he was the only one left. When she looked back, he was always standing right there. He was the only person who stayed loyal through the tragedy. That was the only reason she eventually fell for him. She finally agreed to eat the food he made for her. "You're calling me because you want some porridge?" I asked. "You can hire a professional chef or just order some takeout. There is absolutely no reason for you to be calling me. You are definitely not the Morrison Miller I once knew." "Who are you exactly?" she asked with a sharp and cold voice. The man I knew would never speak to me like this. He was never this cold or heartless to me in the past. She had actually realized that I was a completely different person. I was not the man who had been obsessed with her. I was genuinely impressed that she had noticed the total change. "It does not matter who I am," I said to her bluntly. "I just want to remind you that we are officially divorced. There is no longer any connection between the two of us. What have you done with the real Morrison?" She screamed out. I ignored her screaming and simply hung up the phone today. I was done listening to her nonsense and crazy emotional outbursts. What a total psycho, I muttered to myself after hanging up. I had never seen someone so arrogant and delusional before now. She was truly the most shameless woman I had ever encountered. She had treated him like garbage for many years in college. Now she has the nerve to ask me why I am cold. The truth was that I really was not that man anymore. I started to wonder where the original soul had gone now. I began to ponder the true nature of my arrival here. I want to know why I've been brought to this place. I had a very strange and vivid dream that night. I was standing face to face with a perfect mirror image. He looked exactly like me in every single physical detail today. I did not feel any fear when I looked at him. I felt a weird and deep sense of familiarity with the man. I asked him who he was in a very calm voice. "Hello, I am the original Morrison Miller," he said gently. He had a kind and peaceful smile on his handsome face. "I want to thank you for everything you did for me." "How exactly did I help you?" I asked him in confusion. He began to explain the entire situation to me slowly today. He had become aware of his reality a long time ago. He had wanted to leave her, but was unable to do it. He was a slave to the written plot of the novel. An invisible hand was controlling every single move he ever made. His entire existence was focused solely on Sarah Sterling's drama. He had reached his breaking point and wanted to escape it. His powerful desire for freedom had created a psychic bridge. Your own desire for a new life resonated with mine perfectly. You were brought into this world to take my place here. You became me and finally changed the course of the story. You severed all the toxic ties I had with that woman. I'm no longer a puppet being controlled by the author. I can finally live the life I always truly wanted to have. I was genuinely happy to hear that he was finally free. Does this mean that I can finally return to my home? Morrison Miller gave me a slow and confident nod of agreement. Everything around me faded into a deep and total darkness instantly. I woke up and found myself lying in my own bed. My phone was lying right there on the pillow next to me. It was still open to the novel I had been reading before. I noticed that the entire content of the book had changed. The story had been rewritten to reflect my own actions there. The new ending of the novel was a lot more satisfying. Morrison and Sarah Sterling were officially divorced in the new version. She had lost her leg in a terrible accident, just as I saw. Monica had given him a huge portion of the company's shares. She had literally bought his loyalty with the family fortune today. Henry had to stay with her to maintain his public image. He was trapped in a miserable relationship to save his acting career. Sarah Sterling spent her days desperately trying to find her ex. Morrison had moved to Europe as soon as the show finished. He had cut all ties and started a brand new life there. She began to suffer from a very dark and deep depression. The board of directors decided she was no longer fit to lead. She was fired from her position during a major board meeting. They stripped her of all her power and authority in minutes. She had no idea that her wealth was being stolen by others. Her status within the family company was falling apart very fast. All of her assets were being drained by the other relatives. The greedy business partners were taking everything she had left now. Henry Harrison was eventually caught in a massive public scandal today. Paparazzi caught him leaving a hotel with a famous young actress. A recording of him talking about Sarah was leaked to Twitter. He was heard complaining about her disability to a close friend. I have wanted to dump that cripple for a long time now. If I had known she would be a burden, I would never return. Coming back to her was the biggest mistake of my whole life. I have been cursed with terrible luck because of that woman. His reputation in the movie industry was completely and totally destroyed. His carefully crafted image fell apart in a single afternoon online. His millions of followers turned on him and began to attack. He became the most hated man in America in a few hours. His career was over and nobody would hire him for anything. Every single brand he worked with canceled their contracts with him. He lost all of his money paying off the legal penalties now. Sarah Sterling spent her final days drinking herself to death alone. She tried to forget her misery by staying constantly drunk every day. She spent every night alone with a bottle in her hand. She kept calling his old number over and over again in vain. That phone line had been disconnected for many months by now. You have just forgotten how much you truly love me, Morrison. You will realize your mistake once your memory finally returns to you. Everyone else in the world has turned their backs on me. I know that you're the only one who will never leave. The man on the phone today was not the real you. If it were really you, you would be here by my side. I could not help but laugh as I read the final pages. She died without ever knowing the truth about what had happened. The Morrison she wanted was gone from the world forever now. The real man was living a beautiful and happy life elsewhere. He was finally free from the chains of his fictional destiny. He never thought about her or her toxic family ever again. On the day she died of alcohol poisoning, he was successful. Morrison Miller flew back to Los Angeles for a major event. He was attending the awards ceremony as a top nominee today. The book ended with his triumph and her lonely and sad death. I scroll through the final reader reviews of the new version. One specific comment at the bottom caught my eye immediately today. The username of the commenter was simply Morrison Miller himself. The post contained only 2 simple words of sincere gratitude. I assumed it was just a strange coincidence and closed the book. When you stop pinning your hopes on others changing and start running toward your own horizon, you will find that the universe aligns and the stars finally stay bright for you.